Right, and today I'd like to show you about kingpins. This is a kingpin, but where does that go? Well, this is a strange contraption, but this is actually the front section. This is the front hub where you have the wheel. So this part here is suspension part that goes in here, that where you have a big giant spring and you have some damper units or whatever that is oil filled. So this is like a combination of motorcycle damping, regular damping, and front hub assembly and a steering assembly in one big box. The kingpin, however, is the point of this that you turn over. It goes like this. This is attached to the front rigid front axle. Let me show you. On her. This is the front axle. And there's a hole here. And this is firm and rigid. So this is a front axle. Okay? It's just like the trucks. But the truck, as you can see here, is not quite the same, because it's also 4x4, which means that it rotates as well. This does not rotate. This is firm. The locking key, as I'm going to show you, is going to be put in here. So you lock the kingpin, which is going through here, so it'll be firm. And that won't rotate. It's not the kingpin that rotates. It's the entire assembly, as you saw on the bench there, that is moving in and out. Back to the kingpin. So how does this work? Well, we have a bushing, because it's not a bearing, it's a bushing. As you can see, there's a hole in it, and that's because there is a grease nipple here. So the grease has to come out. So if you sit it in like this, and there's no hole on the other side, so if you sit like this, it won't work, because you won't be able to lubricate. The thread that you can see is clearly in here. I know you can see it. Let's see if we can find it. There it is. That groove there transport the grease from the nipple to the kingpin, so you have something that you can actually work on. So this is not a bearing, this is a bushing. But there is also a bearing here, but let me just show you. If you just install this like this, it's going to have to, of course, to come all the way down. And the same goes with this one here. That goes down there. But let's just imagine that's already in here. Then you have a pressure bearing. This takes all the weight of the front axle. So you have one part here, this one here, that is firmly on here. And the other part is on the axle. Which means when you install this and you put pressure on it, it will pressure on this, and you still have a pivot point. I don't know if you can see it, but it can actually move around like that. See? No, regardless of how much pressure I put on this, it'll be working on that, like that, yeah? And the kingpin itself, I have to take this out, will come through here, like this. There we go. And be locked. So this entire contraption here is the one that is turning, and not the kingpin. Right. Problem here is, as you can well know, this is not standard. This is made in 1939. So getting parts is a bit of a problem. But there is a company called Remax back then who made these kits. However, those of us who have worked on old school machines and old school cars like this know that this would probably be nowhere near the dimensions that are in this. So what we can do, I have to show you, because this is a plastic gauge, which is absolutely worthless really, but you measure the hole here, and you measure this assembled, and with very fine clearance, you install these. So you have to get this bored out, if you can say so, or honed or whatever, yeah. And you can see that I tried to see if I can clean all this up a bit, and it looks great, but it's not nearly the new bearing. It's not even near the new bearing. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do what we all should do, unless of course you have the machinery to do this. I'm going to take this to the local blacksmith that we have, a machinist, and he's going to do the exact measurements that I just did, and have the right tools to make this go real straight, and the same go with the other one. Install these so I can take this here box here, and I can install that on the car. So I'm not even going to try this because, well, if I am, I'm going to use hours and hours of shaving micromillimeters off, and I'm not even sure after that that this is straight, and this has to be straight, because if it's, just imagine that if this gets just a little bit bended like that, yeah, it will not be able to sit straight in the other hole. So this is very important that this will be done correctly. Right? Okay, so I'm going to clean it up a bit more, of course. And I'm going to have to take a look and see inside here how this looks. I'm just going to unscrew this and just pop down and have a look down there. If it looks all rusty, I have to dismantle everything. I don't think it is, but we'll never know. So, to recap, kingpin, firm. This is the turner, is turning over this. So this is firm and the rest turns over here on the bearings. No, the bushings. And the pin is locked with this thing here through the hole that we have on the front axle. And we have the bearing, the pressure bearing, like that. All this installed in here and on the car, on the axle that is rigid right there. So what's the difference between this here and the car that you have? Well, I'll try to explain this. I'm just going to set this off here so we have it. Hang on. Okay. I'm trying to explain this. On the old car, you have a firm and rigid front axle. Let's put it like this. Boom, there you have it. Imagine a wheel here and imagine a wheel here. This is firm. So when you're driving and you're hitting a pothole, well, what happened? The wheel down here went down the hole and actually lifted up a bit on the other, which means that the driving surface contact has been changed. Yeah, this is rigid. It's not used at all. That's not common anymore. Well, it's used on trucks and it's used on big lorries and whatever, in a certain extent. But they also got smarter on buses, but that is because a front axle that is firm can take more weight than an independent steering or suspension. Sorry, we were talking about suspension, yeah, and a front axle. So if I take these apart and make them to two independent suspensions, you don't have a rigid front axle anymore. So I can go down the pothole as much as I want down here. Nothing happens over here. So you always have that good grip, regardless if this is going up and down and this is you always have the best contact on the surface as possible. With this here firm thing here, no, not really. Which means that, as we saw on the suspension part itself, most cars have a leaf spring, even on the front axles. This one does not. This one has this strange looking thing, as we see here. Right? I don't know if you can call it early stages. I don't know if you can call it that, but okay, got a little quicker there. But just imagine that if you're going down the road and it's going pretty fast and you have this, boom, and everything is turning like that, it's an uncomfortable ride. But if it's like this, and the car just sits there, So old school, it functions great. I mean, there's no problems, there's no worry about that. It functions just great. It's no comfort right though. And if we have a look at the truck there, there's a totally different ball game, because it has a front axle, yes, but it is a driven front axle because it's 4x4. We'll talk about that in a different day. So what I'm going to do now, to recap all of this, is the front hub suspension box is going to go to a machinist and have the kingpin bushings installed. So that'll be done in a correct manner and also in the right way. So it'll be straight. I can do that myself, but I don't have the tools for it. So I would have to buy the tools to make sure that everything looks just damn great. Using sandpaper and whatever, just don't do it, because it'll be not straight. Oh, you go like that or like that, and just don't do it. Have something do it. Have someone else do it. Right. So that's the plan. Well, see you next time when we install the kingpin and the entire box, so that we can now see how much it has worked. Have a nice weekend.